Yasodananda Brajajana Ranjana Yasodananda Brajajana Ranjana Yasodananda Brajajana Ranjana Yasodananda Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Banachari Yamunatira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jayam Shri Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Satara, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. Srila Prabhupada's Mahotsava Ki Jai. So the verse, can we get the verse up so everybody can everybody see it okay? Okay, so actually we'll do word by word in translation, and then we'll chant the verse. Na, not. Iha, here. Yat, which. Karma, work. Dharmaya, for perfection of religious life. Na, not. Viragaya, for detachment. Kalpte, leads. Na, not. Tirthapada, of the Lord's lotus feet. Sevayai, to devotional service. Jivan, living. Api, although. Mrita, dead. He, indeed. Sa, he. So now if we can come together, starting 1, 2, 3. Nehayat, all together. Nehayat karma dharmaya, na viragaya kalpate, na tirtha parasevayai, jivanapi mrito hisa. Again. Nehayat karma dharmaya, nirvaragya kalpate, na tirtha parasevaya, jivanapi mrito hisa. Nehayat karma dharmaya, navikaya kalpate, na tirtha parasevaya, jivanapi mrito seha. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Anyone whose work is not meant to elevate him to religious life, anyone whose religious, ritualistic performances do not raise him to renunciation, and anyone seated in renunciation that does not lead him to devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead must be considered dead, although he is breathing. Purport by His Divine Grace. Devahuti's statement is that since she was attached to living with her husband for sense gratification, which does not lead to liberation from material entanglement, her life was simply a waste of time. Any work one performs that does not lead to the state of religious life is useless activity. Everyone is by nature inclined to some sort of work, and when that work leads one to religious life, and religious life leads one to renunciation, and renunciation leads one to devotional service, one attains the perfection of work. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, any work that does not lead ultimately to the standard of devotional service is a cause of bondage in the material world. Yasnartat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha, Bhagavad Gita 3:9. Unless one is gradually elevated to the position of devotional service, beginning from his natural activity, he is to be considered a dead body. Work which does not lead one to the understanding of Krishna consciousness is considered useless. Can we get back to the translation again? And we can read this all together. Anyone whose work is not meant to elevate him to religious life, anyone whose religious ritualistic performances do not raise him to renunciation, and anyone seated in renunciation does not lead him to devotional to service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, must be considered dead, although he is breathing. Om Agyantamrandasya Janana Sakalaya Chakchu Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Prabhupada's pranams, everyone. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskachade Satarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Rasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vancha kalpa turubhyascha kripa sindhu bhavevyata patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So in the interest of getting into the mood of this festival, celebrating Srila Prabhupada, I wanted to speak a little bit about him. And being here in this particular very special Dham, the Dwarka Dham, with their most outstanding, beautiful Lordship, Sri Sri Rukmini Dwarkadish, Jagannath Subhadra Baladev, and Sri Sri Gaurnitai. It's a very powerful place here. Not the least by which His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada has sanctified this place by his presence and continues to do so. I just have to say something. As far as I knew, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra was like the Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, and then over here, there it's missing part of the mantra, and over here is Rama, Hare Hare with no Rama, and I'm like, I see, okay. It's like, what's going on here? Anyway, I see. So, exclusive devotion to Srila Prabhupada and his teachings is not fanaticism. We touched upon this yesterday at the end of the Maharaj's class, and there was kind of a lively discussion. So Srila Prabhupada was empowered by Lord Krishna to do what no other previous spiritual master had done, spreading the message of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement worldwide. And this can't be disputed. Sometimes persons criticize ISKCON. ISKCON's too focused on Srila Prabhupada. and they claim we are narrow-minded or fanatical. While we know and honor all saintly Vaishnavas, spiritual teachers, seekers of the truth, as members of ISKCON, we are bound heart and soul to the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, etc., and to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as expounded and taught to us by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. So many saintly acharyas followed in line after the departure of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, carrying on his message, but gradually the sampradaya fell into disarray with many upper sampradayas. If you're, anybody here new? Everybody looks pretty. Okay, so I don't have to explain. So upper sampradayas were concocting philosophical deviations and rituals. And eventually the Vaishnavas were completely ignored and rejected by the respective public. And the original pure message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was lost. Then in the early 1800s, 1834, something like that, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur appeared, and by divine guidance, as a seeker of the truth, he came into contact with the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it completely transformed his life. Because he wasn't born into a Vaishnava family. His family was worshipping Chanting. I don't have time to go into that, but it's very fascinating. So, how he became connected with Mahaprabhu. And it took him until he was 34 years to actually get a copy of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, because the whole Vaishnava philosophy and Sampradaya had been disregarded. So he read and reread, carefully studied, and he became convinced about the divinity of Lord Chaitanya. And his life was completely transformed, and it became his mission to expose the bogus followers and restore the message of Mahaprabhu to its rightful purity and respect. And he came forward and he presented the true understanding of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, speaking strongly against the deviant groups that distorted and perverted the pure teachings of Mahaprabhu, and it caused the Gaudiya Vaishnavism to become disavowed among the respected class of citizens. And he was assisted in his noble efforts by his son, who later on became known as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And together they fearlessly preached the pure glories of the Sankirtan mission far and wide within the boundaries of India. But Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was visionary, and he understood that this message was intended to go around the world, and the world was not just Bharatvarsha. So he, in 1896, a small book written by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in English, The Life and Precepts of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, made its way outside of India into countries like England and Canada, and thus expanding the possibility of spreading the Lord's teaching all over the world as he himself predicted and desires. This was also the same year as our Srila Prabhupada's birth, September 1st, 1896. So in this mood of expansive preaching, our Srila Prabhupada, I'm saying our Srila Prabhupada, because we also honor Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada. So our Srila Prabhupada entered this mood of expansive preaching, and he became an initiated disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is not just another name and picture in the line of disciplic succession, because he accomplished something that no previous acharya had done. In total dedication to the order of his guru, he fulfilled the mandate of Lord Chaitanya by spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. And no one else can make that claim to that distinction. It's a standalone record. That means it can't be broken. and this cannot be disputed. So we mentioned this verse yesterday from the Antya-lila CC 711. Fundamental religious principles in Kali is chanting the holy names of Krishna. No one can successfully preach the Sankirtan movement without being specifically empowered to do so by the Lord. Such a person is known as Shaktavesh Avatar, specifically empowered by the Lord to fulfill a particular mission. So an acharya, someone who teaches by example. And Srila Prabhupada never claimed fame or prestige for his accomplishments, which would take days to elucidate. When asked about his success, he would modestly say, "If I have done anything, it is that I've always followed the teachings of my spiritual master. I've not deviated. It is by his mercy only there is success." He was 100% loyal to his spiritual master, as was expressed similarly by Sri Prabhupada in the Bhagavatam 7.9.28, very well-known verse. "My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of my association with material desire, one after the other, I was gradually falling into a blind well full of snakes, following the general populace. But your servant, Narada Muni, kindly accepted me as his disciple and instructed me how to achieve transcendence." And then comes the instruction. "Therefore, my first duty is to serve him. How could I leave his service?" So much is packed into this simple statement, but I'll focus on the beautiful relationship between Prahlad and Narada Muni, his guru. Nothing could deviate Prahlad from the service and surrender to Narada Muni. Even when his life was being threatened in ways we cannot even imagine, he remained fixed and composed. He didn't go outside seeking the advice of ill-informed fools or take to some concocted practices or try to figure out why all this was going on to him. He remained loyal to the instructions and service of his guru, giving all loyalty to him without division. So this same loyalty was exemplified by our Srila Prabhupada in all instances without compromise. And it was not a smooth ride for Srila Prabhupada. You know, you think because of all the accolades that he'd achieved, and we forget or don't even know about some of the intense hardships that faced him, not only before he came here by his own godbrothers, but after arriving. There were nights when he was living in that little windowless closet somewhere in Manhattan, with not even a place to shower or cook. He was telling one person, "Some nights I was so hungry I couldn't sleep." You know, has that really ever happened to us, you know? So I will give an example that remained close to my heart throughout my life as I attempt to become a devotee. And this happened in San Francisco in July of 1967. So the situation was that Srila Prabhupada was departing. He was going to go back to India to try to recover his health following the stroke, heart attack, whatever had happened to him in New York. And then they tried to get a place for him to recover on the Jersey seashore. They were thinking fresh air, some sun, you know, the breezes of the ocean, and the weather was foul, overcast, cloudy, windy, not conducive. So we came to San Francisco, and we found a place in Stinson Beach, which is across the bay, across the Golden Gate Bridge in Marin County, along the sea, but not directly confronting the sea. So he was staying there, but he wasn't really getting better. We had our first Rath Yatra during this time. He could not make the trip over. And the roads were really twisty, and it just would set, it was like being seasick. So the next day after Rath Yatra, we brought Jagannath Subhaja and Baladev to Srila Prabhupada, and he stayed with Srila Prabhupada for 5 days, Anyway, he made the decision. He called the devotees. He said, I want to meet all the devotees in the temple. So, we weren't such a profuse amount in those days. And we were there. We didn't know what was going to be said or what, but he was sitting very soberly, very quietly, and he explained to us that he would plan to return. And actually it made sense, because according to our Vedic standards, one can recover better in their home situation. Like, the climate, the foods, the sounds, etc. And then, if Krishna lets, he said, I will return. So that was followed, that little bombshell was, because up until then, he was always there. Even if he was in New York, he was there, a phone call away, a letter away. With questions, we could quickly get an answer. So everything we did, he was there in our lives, guiding and directing. And suddenly he was not going to be so accessible. And we suddenly, our bravado took a little diminishment. Like, how are we going to do this? And he told us, I'm an old man. I may die at any time. I want you boys and girls to push on this mission. That was followed by profound silence on our part. How was that going to happen? How could we do this? So it was proposed, because we didn't know prior to coming, even after he arrived, he contacted God Brothers, come and help preach the mission of Mahaprabhu. These people are suffering for want of knowledge about Radha and Krishna. And he was sometimes not even given the courtesy of an answer, or else he would get some kind of, I can't leave Vrindavan, some kind of reply that. So it was considered by one of the devotees, familiar with that background, that perhaps we could get somebody to come and teach us in his absence, to help us. There was no thought of replacing Prabhupada. Swamiji, as of course he was known then. So that question was put forth to him. And again, profound silence. He was sitting back, very erect. And we were just like, time was suspended. One of those, a moment is 12 years or more type of things. And then he spoke in a very deep, grave voice. My spiritual master was not an ordinary man. He saved me. If even one person were to come and change even one word of what I have taught you, the whole thing would be spoiled. Everything I have to teach you is in these books. And these books at that time were the first volume of the Bhagavatam in 3 parts. Everything I have to teach you is in these books. And again, I'm an old man. I might die at any moment. I want you boys and girls to push on this movement. If even one person were to come and change even one word of what I have taught you, the whole thing would be spoiled. There was no personal agenda or pride. He was giving full credit and loyalty to Bhaktisiddhanta, and he was protecting us and protecting ISKCON in our early stages of infancy. At that point, ISKCON was barely 1 year old. Would one consider it fanatical for a parent to hold tightly to the hand of a young child when crossing a dangerous street? It's a duty. Srila Prabhupada saw how his God brothers had ignored his earlier attempts to work cooperatively with them. He was offering his service to them to assist Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, silence, excuses. He heard the criticism that Swami Maharaj, as he was known, had left India for America, associating with the Malechas. And now that there was some success, their interest would not be to help, but to rather gain control by interfering. He could understand what we could not. and later incidents prove this to be a fact. We never thought of him as an old man. I mean, we knew the mantra, the second mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra, first mantra, second mantra, birth, death, disease, old age. But we never put it into context of our own little lives. And certainly Swamiji was not seen as an old man. I want you boys and girls to push on this movement. He was leaving the future of the Hare Krishna movement, ISKCON, in the hands of children who could barely understand what was happening, let alone what was to happen in the future. He protected us and ISKCON from outside influences, and he inspired faith. He taught us by his own example of fearlessness and purity. He built faith through strong lectures, his honesty and his transparency, his loving care and guidance. There were no scandals surrounding his character. He embodied faith in a world of cheating and disappointment. Faith inspires gratitude and an obligation that is experienced through service. When we accept something from our Guru, a debt is formed, and we're obliged to reciprocate. That reciprocation, following the instructions of the Guru, is the real meaning of Guru Dakshin. Sometimes, and get initiated, you go around Guru Dakshin. That's one type. But the real thing is that we follow the instructions of the spiritual master. And what did Srila Prabhupada want? That we become lovers of Krishna. And to attain that love, we follow his instructions, not someone else's. So following his instructions as they were given to us is not sentimentalism, it's essential. Satisfaction of Guru is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. He said, I'm not a great devotee. My only qualification is my 100% faith in my spiritual master. And this loyalty was Srila Prabhupada's source of power to pioneer and spread the Sankirtan movement. And to be effective, we, his followers, must develop our own faith, teaching and bolstering faith in Srila Prabhupada by representing him effectively. In a letter in December of 67, his humility was again obvious. Although officially I am your spiritual master, I consider you all, my students, as my spiritual master, because your love for Krishna and service for Krishna teach me how to become a sincere Krishna conscious person. He's writing that to us. 67. This was mentioned yesterday. Somebody wondered, are you the spiritual master of the entire world? I think the answer wasn't given. The answer is, no, I'm simply the servant. Srila Prabhupada. And, okay, what is the time, end time? Okay, but, when do you expect me to get done? Okay, so some qualities of Srila Prabhupada. He was kind to everyone. In his conversation in September of 68, now another thing, that girls should not be taken as inferior. You see, sometimes Scripture we say women is a khandabadij, that should not be aggravated, that women is inferior, or something like that. So the girls who come, you should treat them nicely. After all, anyone who is coming to Krishna consciousness, man or woman, boys or girls, they are welcome. They are very fortunate, you see? Now I have to go a little faster. Okay, fixed in the absolute truth. He never deviated in presenting Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Like nowadays, sometimes even devotees have a hard time speaking about Krishna. They will talk about the Divine One or some, descriptive terminology, but avoid saying Krishna because they don't want to offend anyone. Although I guess it's okay to offend Krishna, I don't know. But in a letter to Vandas, May 75, so Vandas was a published poet before he joined the Hare Krishna movement. And the leader of the New Vrindavan community at the time, he thought it would be nice for Van to write a book of poetry. He would bind it and give it to Prabhupada, and he did that. So would you like to know what Prabhupada had to say about this book? He wrote, "My dear Vandas, I have read the Chintamani poetry book. Krishna's name is only mentioned in 2 poems in the entire book. What is this? There's so many poems written by great acharyas. Why do you try to concoct something like this? This is not in our line. It is a waste of time, money, paper, ink, and labor. There is so much work to do for spreading Krishna consciousness. You should all spend more time reading my books very carefully and stop all this unnecessary manufacturing. Why is there no picture of Krishna on the cover? If you have and then, he's given him what we used to call the sauce. And he made that very clearly. And then he gives him a way out, an honorable way out. If you have desire to write poetry, better you read 1 chapter of Krishna book very carefully, then put it into poetry. Do not concoct anything. There's no need for that type of poetry. If you do this, I think it will be appreciated very nicely." Okay, 2 minutes over time. I said 2 minutes, you said, I get a few more, 8:37? Okay, so. Prabhupada was speaking to us in the courtyard of Radha Damodar in 1972 during Kartik. And again, he presented himself as insignificant. I've not done anything extraordinary. So when one is advanced, this is coming from the Nectar of Devotion series. So when one is advanced, he can see the importance of devotees. Advanced devotees never disobeys or disrespect another devotee. Disrespect to another devotee is a great offense. Vaishnavaparad is very serious offense. Therefore, we teach among the devotees. Devotees, no gender issue here. We teach among the devotees, Prabhu, such and such Prabhu. This should not be spoken simply by lips. It should be realized. Everyone should think other devotee as his Prabhu, his spiritual master, not he should try to become the master. This was on October 23rd. That was early day. Everyone addressed each other, one another, men, the women, as Prabhu. And it was such a nice mood. Now, anyways, nice to know some of the things that Prabhupada taught us, and if you can kind of reinsert them, you will see a difference in your mood in life. Faultless. Srila Prabhupada was faultless. An early disciple, Krishna Das, 67, he was assisting him, and Prabhupada handed him a letter to put to the post office. And he started to leave, and he saw there was a little slit in the envelope, and he takes it back, and he shows him, and Prabhupada says, "No, go ahead." And doubt was written all over his face. Why would he put this letter in the mail with a little slit? And Prabhupada could understand, and he says to him, "Know that all I do is faultless." And then he explained, this letter is going to India. it's coming from America. If they see a letter coming from America, they'll think there may be some money, and they'll open it up. And when they don't see any money, they'll throw it away, and the letter won't get delivered. Therefore, I'm giving them, a little peek hole. Prabhupada is faultless. Completely attached to Krishna. So one time he was asked, when did you first remember Krishna? And he told him, there was never a time that I forgot Krishna. But when did you first remember? He said, September 1st, 1896, his birthday. One time in self-control. So one time in Paris, so the French, anybody here French? So huh? French? Oh, okay. French people, but you're an American now, so. But in Paris, I've experienced, people can be really like, if you're not French and you don't speak French, they can be really botheration to you. They look down. The Prabhupada's at this big auditorium with students, the worst, and he was speaking, and the devotees had brought, somehow in those days we just thought you had to lug these massive, huge Vyasa signs everywhere. So they brought this massive, huge Vyasa sign. They had it on the, on the platform. He's speaking, and then afterwards they have question and answers. And this one person, he starts to heckle him. So Prabhupada, what is he couldn't understand. What is he saying? And he goes, he wants to know why you're sitting on a throne. And Prabhupada said, oh, you can also sit on the Vyasa sign, provided you become Krishna conscious. So it was such a perfect reply, that the person just kind of slinked his way out. And then I will end with compassion. Because I think, of course, any one of these could be compassion. When a pure devotee acts, everything is a mood of compassion for those around. But Srila Prabhupada had wonderful compassion exchanges with the early disciples. So Krishna Das, who I mentioned earlier, had a sister named Sarah, who was younger. And she didn't have a great start in life. When the mother was pregnant, she didn't want to have a kid, but to her credit, she didn't have an abortion. But when she had the baby, she walked out of the hospital, leaving the baby behind. So somehow the social services, got them back together. And then the mother would keep the girl out of school. And she would send her out to steal, shoplift. So the result was extremely poor grades and massive amounts of absenteeism. And her brother showed the first Gita, this Macmillan Gita, and it just awakened something in her. She was only 16 years old, and it awakened something in her heart, and she wanted to also go to the temple. But the mother wasn't going to have it. It was already bad enough that one kid had, transitioned out. And somehow or other, during a darshan, Krishna Das asked Srila Prabhupada, is there something we can do for my sister? Every once in a while she'd get to come, so Prabhupada was aware of her. Is there something we can do for her? And Prabhupada kind of looks at all of us, and then he looks at me and Shamsundar. We were sitting in the front, and he goes, perhaps Malati and Shamsundar could adopt her. So not to be, this is empowerment, though. Prabhupada would empower you to do something that would be kind of in this case, legally impossible. But we didn't think like that. Next day I marched down to the city hall. I found out what you had to do to gain custody of a child who was somebody else's child. Filled out the paperwork. We got court dates. So she and the father and mother were not together, but the father still had me and Shamsundar, the girls, Sarah. Each one by one. It's a family court. We go in and we meet the judge. Then the judge comes out. It was a lady, and she looks at us all sitting there. She had one of those, gavels, and she goes, well, this may seem a little strange that the child is 16 and the parents are 22 and 24, but I give custody to this couple. Bang, suddenly we had a teenage daughter. And then she was thinking, now I can just stay all day with the devotees, do what the devotees do, and Prabhupada indicated she had to finish school. Happened to be a high school, right a block and a half down from the temple. So I go there and with my sari tilak, and we were so small then, it wasn't like common to see, that thing. And I march in there with her temple records. I tell this, I want to see the what do you call it, the head of the principal. I knew it was a P. So we want to see the principal. What do you want to see the principal? Yes, I want to enroll the student. So I go there, and I explained that I want to enroll this girl, that she has to complete her education, and I hand over the portfolio of all, and all he could see, the highest grade was something like a C- or a D+, wasn't too good, and he goes, this doesn't look very good, and suddenly, it was like, I stood up and I said, just give her one chance. I promise you it will be different this time. I got really assertive, and he goes, all right, one chance. So the next day, she's going to school with her sari or tilak, and she didn't miss any days. Her grades went up, but she still didn't want to be there. So Prabhupada was coming again for another darshan, a visit. So there was a darshan, and she thought she had something to tell him, that if he heard that would be it. Okay, no school. And he raises her hand, and he goes, Swamiji, when I go to school, the boys bother me. She was beautiful, blonde hair, blue eyes, just a beautiful girl. And so the boys bother me, and Prabhupada says, oh? Yes, they want my address. They want to come and see me after school. Prabhupada says, oh, that's all right. Give them the address of the temple, and that way they'll see Krishna. And then later, she had another question, which is more philosophical, and he goes, just see how eager this young girl is for Krishna. And he turns, he goes, if you like, Krishna will kiss you. Anyway, I guess I can end. It's 8:40. His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hi, Krishna.